Welcome, Startup CPG listeners. On today's podcast, we have Aaron Barnholt of Cultivate CPG. It's a brokerage that specializes in working with early stage brands. I'm really excited for you to hear Aaron's tips on launching a brand into retail. And we had a great discussion on specific anchor retailers that you can apply to in your first year, including tips for the actual submission and how to do well with them. Aaron has a great background working across distributors, brands, and now as a broker, so I know you'll find his insights extremely useful and practical. Enjoy. All right, welcome, Startup CPG listeners. So today we're joined by Aaron Barnholt, who's president at Cultivate CPG. Aaron's got a really cool background, including lots of major US retailers. His expertise is super remarkable. He has spent 5 years as VP of sales at companies, scaling startups from local gems to national success stories. So join us. We're going to hear a lot of insights from Aaron about accelerating growth and bringing your founder dreams to life in the world of CPG. Welcome, Aaron. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Daniel, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Um,
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's jump right in. Aaron, do you mind just giving people a little bit more background on your career journey and, kind of what led you to cultivate CPG?
Yeah, no, not at all. So I started in the grocery business really in probably 2010. I worked at KE Distributors through college, or after college, I should say. Worked in various roles there, everything from Amazon specialist, so building items in Amazon, selling them out of KE warehouses, to assistant to category managers. So I helped set up items, I helped with roadmaps, I managed the New at KE program. I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with that. And then I ultimately landed at account manager at Albertson Safeway. So I was kind of an account manager, and then I jumped from there over to the brand side. So I went and worked at Yai's Thai.
What does an
Yeah.
account manager at KeHE do?
Yeah, so you're a human speed bag for the retailer, and you deal with thousands of brands that want to get their products into that retailer. No, but really, you're in the retailer's office, right? So you're their resource because you manage all of their natural and specialty products, right? All the supply chain side and the logistics, and then even like in store, right? Some accounts have KeHE and UNFI reps that write orders, they fill orders, and they're the point person. So you're a large, essentially a DSD, distributor.
I was just going to ask, in my experience, there's some category managers who are more hands off, but then there are some that are really hands on, and the buyers almost use them to screen brands
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
take
So
recommendations from them.
like a Whole Foods, you would barely see any UNFI, account management stuff. They're essentially a supply chain team, sort of similar at Sprouts. On the flip side, if you go to a place like Wegmans or you go to a place like Meijer, the KeHE and the UNFI teams, they're almost the broker, right? They're the gatekeepers for assortment decisions. And no matter if you're Cultivate or you're representing yourself or you're Acosta, you're going most of the time through the account teams if you are a natural specialty product. So it varies for sure. Being an ex-distributor account manager, I like account managers. They have a really hard job. They deal with the whole vendor community. They deal with all the brokers, and they also deal with all the retailers. So it's a tough job. I definitely think I learned a lot there, and I'm grateful for that experience for sure.
That's cool. I always tell people, yeah, treat those distributor reps as if they're
Yeah,
buyers. Do all of your
yeah,
marketing to them. Follow up with them. They can hook you up big time if they believe in your
totally.
brand, and stop them at the trade shows and try to figure out which accounts they cover. Especially, I mean, you mentioned Safeway
Yeah,
Albertson. I think there especially we had a lot of help from them, and they were the ones presenting our items in a lot of
yep,
cases.
yeah, absolutely, super helpful.
Cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
yeah, so then you went to then what was after KeHE?
yeah, so I went to Yai's Thai, which is a Thai condiment company. It's nationally distributed, and the founders came into the Safeway office one day in Denver, and we kind of hit it off. Anyway, they asked me to come run sales, and I was looking for something new, and it was a good opportunity to jump in ground level, right? And I ran sales for them for 4 or 5 years.
How did that experience from KeHE help you just jump right into the sales world? What was that transition like? Because I do see a lot of people who are former buyers or for distributor reps then turn on to the brand side.
I mean, I was light years ahead of the game, knowing 200 KE reps, right? To your point, like utilizing the distributor reps definitely helped me accelerate the growth of that brand. It helped that A, I had really cool founders that I worked for, and B, we had a super cool product that there wasn't a lot of innovation within the Asian set, right? Center store at that time. So it was kind of perfect timing. And yeah, we got into essentially every national natural retailer, all the independents, and started chipping away at conventional as well. And yeah, so it was a super fun experience. Got to fly all over the country. This was pre-COVID, so it was you fly to anywhere for a 30-minute meeting, and then you get back on a plane, you go home, and you fly out the next day or the next week. So uh, yeah, awesome times. Learned a lot. Met a ton of people. You learn what retailers are worth your time and energy, and which ones aren't, right? Pretty quick. So that definitely impacts Cultivate and what we strive to do with our brand partners.
Yeah, I just remembering you talk about traveling like pre-COVID. I actually went to an ECRM event earlier this year as part of our partnership with RangeMe, and actually just sitting down and having a meeting with a buyer I'd never met before was mind blowing. Like, oh my God, when was the last time I did this? This is incredible. So
Right.
do you like the new, do you like, which do you like better? The old world where you have to travel there, but it's kind of special and you might get some cool time with them, and they're probably more likely to bring you on if you're actually making the pilgrimage, versus the new world where you can get all of this stuff done from the nice little home office I see you have there.
Yeah, hybrid. I'd go hybrid. So it's nice not traveling for every single meeting. I like obviously going to the shows and then the occasional meeting with retailers when they're open to meeting in person. A lot of retailers are coming back, but it's slow, and I think yeah, a mix of both. Big important meetings with retailers you've never had FaceTime with, I think is super important. But if we don't have to sit on the plane every single week, it's going to save a lot of time and energy for everyone, including retailers, vendors, brokers, the whole nine. So I like a hybrid kind of mix, and taking advantage of when we're at Expo, when we're at the KE and UNFI shows, I think it is what we do, right? I mean, make the most of your time when you are traveling. So
Yeah. My kind of rule of thumb is if they ask you to come for the in-person meeting, go to the in-person
you
meeting. If
go.
it's a big enough retailer, then they're asking you for a reason and you should be able to
Yeah.
make the most of it.
All,
Cool.
all day. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So, Aaron, tell me about Cultivate CPG. How did it get started? Who were the early brands that you were working with? Yeah, tell me about the early days.
Totally. So I met Tommy along the way when I was at KeHE. Tom Williams. He started multiple brands, but he had a frozen vegetable line called Tommy's Superfood, and we kind of stayed in touch when I was at KeHE. He was a younger guy, and we just kind of clicked. And anyway, fast forward when we started this company, we both, we were just catching up, and we said, "Hey, there's a need for effective brokers for very early stage brands." And we kind of hooked up and started a little side hustle, frankly. And very quickly, it was like, wow, there is a massive need for broker representation, or a sales outfit, whatever you want to call it, a service that helps brands scale their product and get it onto shelves. And so, yeah, I think our first brand was Orabora sparkling water. So I met Paul through mutual friends. They were like, "Hey, Aaron is in the grocery industry. You should probably talk to this guy." And we'd meet up in Denver at like coffee shops, and I'd blow his mind talking about a UPC, a DC, a promo plan, all these things that he's like, "What are you talking about?" He'd write it all down. Um, and so yeah, we helped, and that was our earliest days, his earliest days, right? I was going up and overseeing production at the Co-Man. It was the whole nine. And I don't want to take any credit away from Paul, right? I mean, he is a rocket ship, but yeah, we helped them for his probably first 12 to 18 months in retail space. And yeah, from there, we've worked with tons of fun brands, but we've had to grow our company with these young brands. So, at first, for the first 6 months, it was just Tom and I, and kind of hard to convince, young brands to hire a two-person brokerage, and now we've scaled up and we've added, key players to the team that are really, really strong in their regions. And we sort of have we are a national brokerage, right? And we are focused on key retailers in each region. So that's kind of our playbook.
And what would you say? What's your strong suit? Like, what are you great at? What's stuff that I mean, I think it makes all the sense in the world for you to have a growing brand. Everybody listening to this can relate to that.
Yeah.
But what are you already great at? What's the stuff that you want to get better at in the future?
Yeah, for sure. That's who we want to work with is the young brands, because that is where we shine. That is where we're good. We have to sell product that has no data story. So we're selling the founder's, mission and his or her product, and that's where we shine. And obviously, I'll say we're great at the distributor stuff, right? My background at KeHE, we have another gentleman on our team who comes from KeHE. We have a guy who came from the UNFI Wegmans team, so he's deadly with the distributor stuff. And whether you like it or not, that's part of the game. And then we're very experienced calling on all anchor accounts across the country and knowing which ones are actually going to be impactful for your business, right? Because when you're a young founder, you have a cool product, you say yes to everyone, and usually you find out, okay, maybe there are some retailers that I should probably wait till I'm in year 2, 3, 4, right? And so we try to help navigate. So yeah, the playbook has been built growing our own brands in the past, right? Tommy as a founder, me as a VP of sales.
Awesome. Okay, so let's play it through then. Let's say I'm a new brand that's reaching out to you for some help, and maybe I'm not brand new, but maybe I've spent the last year getting some nice little distribution in the natural channel, like some one-offs. Maybe I'm, close to unlocking some distribution centers. What are you going to tell me? Like, hey, if working with us, here's what we're going to tell you. Here's what we're going to try to go after together. Like, what are your early priorities going to be for a brand like that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's really, we get downloaded on everything that's ever happened, right, with our brands, because we want to know what's what. We want to know what combos they've had. And then essentially, it's, we're going to stick to anchor accounts that are premium. And how we categorize that is obviously the natural folks. That's a given. That's our backyard, right? I don't really believe in a, geography backyard. I believe in the natural channel being your backyard. So we're going to help you speed up sales in that channel. And we're also going to start having combos with this, what I call super regionals. So that's going to be Rayleigh's, that's going to be Wegmans, that's going to be HEB, that's going to be Meyer, right? So it's retailers that are conventional, but they sell a lot of natural product. They have that consumer that is looking for better for you product, maybe a little less price sensitive. And that's where my team is focused day in, day out, right? And I think we also will help build the roadmap, promotionally for a brand, right? Let's get, if you have the money for it, let's build a smart and effective roadmap with KeHE, with UNFI, and that sets us up to then build out all of our retail promotional planning, right? So that's kind of the gist, I'd say.
Okay, so you do the deep dive, figure out who they've already talked to, maybe who they already pissed off or who they have some good momentum with at this point, figure out what you're working with when you get started, and then you do your thing and start reaching out. And so, how does it work? Is it like, so you have, your team and they're connected in with the different retailers. Do they usually kind of already have the relationship warm with a lot of different categories, or are they trying to build then relationships with new category buyers and some retailers? Like, how are they, if you start working with a brand, how do they get that brand on the buyer's radar?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a mix of everything, right? Just as I said, And you mentioned distributor, reps sometimes are very hands-on with assortment decisions, sometimes they're not. I think the same goes for retailers, right? And we call on all of the retailers that these brands want to be in. Some of these retailers we have standing bi-weekly meetings with. Some of them we do lunch with. Some of them we have happy hours with. Some of them may be new to the desk, and we're going to simply just follow the process, right? I think having the kind of the secret handshake at these retailers, kind of, I would say is more of a the old boy mentality, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like relationships are great, but most importantly, you have to know the game. What makes these retailers tick? What do they want to see as far as a promotional program go? And then specifically drill down to each buyer. What makes that person tick, right? Like I could say, hey, we've sold to this guy at so and so retailer a bunch. We know exactly what he's going to be looking for here, and here's probably his or her feedback, right? So yeah, it's a mix of relationship, but also knowing the game at these key retailers, right? And to your point, bring in the KHE or the UNFI person. They're important, right? Invite them to dinner when you're at Expo along with their retailer. Take care of them.
Yeah, really interesting. I remember when I was running a beverage brand, some learnings we would get from our broker, like, hey, this particular buyer actually gets paid on this particular sampling program. So we recommend that you definitely throw a lot of that into your proposal, which I'm not taking a position on whether or not it should be that way, but it did help us get into the account. So that was a really nice learning to have. If you're going to have to pay it up somewhere, so you might as well do it where it counts. And I guess maybe on that topic also of, I'm seeing a lot of brands get more active in just straight up asking the buyer, like, hey, what do you want to see on this proposal? What is your approach to brands actually doing submissions with buyers? How much of it are you basing off other submissions that you guys have done with them, or just general market knowledge versus, trying to discuss it with the buyer, all in this context of we don't all have unlimited money, and especially not anymore, and tougher fundraising, push towards profitability. What are you seeing around those submissions and negotiations?
Some retailers are going to want to be a part of the conversation, right? And they're going to give you good feedback on how to plan your promotions, right? I had a meeting not too long ago with a gal at Thrive Market, Kelly Bond, and she was really helpful on how to build the marketing program for 2024. She was like, hey, here's the things I would do. They move the needle. Put your time and energy there. And that's going to make your dollar go the furthest. And ultimately, it's going to sell the most product through the virtual store there, right? So there's instances where that happens. And then some retailers, they're way too busy and they don't have time to babysit. So they lean on us to put together promo planners that work, right? That we've seen and know work. And as far as negotiation goes, I mean, Eric, and my feedback, I think obviously, if you're women owned, BIPOC owned, whatever, any of that stuff, like always bring it to the table, right? I don't think it guarantees you a pass, but certainly it should be looked at and it should be considered. But what I've seen, in the negotiation process typically is, well, hey, we can't actually waive the slotting fee, but maybe they throw you a free, $10 or $20,000 ad, or maybe they give you off shelf on your first TPR that you do, or open the door for extra marketing outside of just your typical paid TPR at the shelf. So it might not be, hey, everything's free, but it could be, hey, it's not free, but we're willing to throw in this, and the other, right? And that's helpful.
Where does that freebie stuff actually happen? Do you see it because you're on a call with a buyer and you're like asking them, hey, can you help me out? They're like, yeah, I could do this. Or is it over
Yeah.
email negotiations? Like, what are the right words to ask to unlock some of those opportunities that only the buyer probably knows about?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the way I phrase it is, are you guys willing to partner with us on X, Y, and Z? And here's why, right? Like, hey, can you partner with us on a off shelf and or a 50% off ad? And that would be really helpful because we're a small company, right? And we only have so much funds. And the other thing too that, it has always been the saying is we prefer to put the funds into selling the product off the shelf. So we want to put it into ads and TPRs, right? And most retailers understand that, and they're willing to partner on some level. The only flip side to that is there's unlimited brands out there that are willing to spend cash. So you just have to take that into consideration in your final stages of negotiation with these big key retailers. Is they have 10 other brands begging to get in there, right? So it's a balance.
Yeah. Speaking of taking cash, what do you tell brands about Albertsons Safeway, which is, kind of a notorious high slotting, often lower velocity, high price point on shelf kind of account with also a huge risk of being delisted if your product doesn't perform? What's your stance on that for your brands?
All decisions are made at the national level, right? They have the new kind of NCD, the national category director roles, and they come from all the different divisions. And they're the best of the best, right? And so they are the one-stop shop decision makers where 4 or 5 years ago, you went to 14 different divisions and you sold 14 different category managers, right? So, but what I would say is when you ask for a meeting, when you submit your new item form, if you're a young brand with not a lot of distribution, especially not a lot of distribution in the conventional channel, you are angling towards maybe it's your backyard, right? If you're in SoCal, you should probably ask for Vaughn's Pavilions and maybe the Albertsons stores. But more than anything, it's hey, we'd love to be in your specialty division. So that's going to be King's Balducci's. That's going to be United Supermarket, Market Street. That's going to be Hagen, and then you might get Pavilions out of that as well. So that's kind of where I start. Focus small. They know that those stores are less price sensitive and they're more, driven with natural and specialty products. So start small. You're gonna have to probably pay a slotting fee depending on what category you're going into. But yeah, don't go into 1,600 doors and pay 2 cases per SKU per store. You're done.
Yeah, that's a rough one. I like what you're saying about some of the specialty stores. I've also heard some people getting into maybe one of those chains, or like in through the Nosh buy, then
Mhm.
like the natural organics buyer, or maybe
Yep,
leveraging one of the diversity claims, which I think really really amazing to
sure.
see how much the industry is opening up to try to level the playing field and open up really cool opportunities for diverse founders, BIPOC founders, female founders. I love to see that. And then
Absolutely.
trying to use that when you go and negotiate with the broader ones of like, oh no, but I only paid one case slotting at this other place. Can't we do that? So
Right.
I've seen some success that way. It's just so hard because a place like Alberts and Safeway, the potential for volume is absolutely enormous. Obviously, them being I think the number three retailer in the country. But I also personally have talked to some buyers at those chains who have said to me very flatly, like, yeah, we like the product. Listen, it's just about who pays the most. And you're just like, is this world?
Right.
Damn CPG.
Right. Totally.
So, but
Yeah.
anyways, very, very, very helpful insights. And then, so and also just a shout out of that you gave for Kelly Bond from Thrive Market. I love that team. Kelly was on our Startup CPG yacht party sponsored by LI Libations and LI Vibrations last week, and just being really accessible to brands. And just, I found that whole team to be so helpful and straightforward and authentically passionate about the industry. So really great interactions with them. So given everything now let's put you in the driver's seat of a brand. So let's say you launch, Aaron's Cookies or Aaron's sweet beverage company next week. What's your strategy going to be? Let's say, you've got, $1 million in funding lined up and you think you can get more, if you show really good success. What's your game plan going to be for how you're going to go out into market from a sales perspective? Who are you going after and when, and what are some key things you're going to focus on?
Totally. I'm going after all of the key anchor accounts in the country. And that's gonna be Central Market, that's gonna be Fresh Time, that's gonna be Gelson's, Harmon's, all of these accounts, some of which I've already spoke to. I'm going to those because I know Sprouts and Whole Foods are not coming on tomorrow. They're not coming on in the first 3 months, right? I mean, it's no secret. Everyone wants to be in those two retailers. I'll throw Thrive in there too, right? They can do some serious volume. If you wait around all day for just them, you're not going to get to where you want to be. This is a volume game, right? You need to be in as many doors as you can, meaningful, impactful doors. So our approach and our philosophy, and I guess mine is go wide, but stay focused on the right retailers that bring a good ROI. And I could literally rattle off all the anchors that we love working with if you want. But yeah, it's focus on anchors that open DCs that get you closer to building data for the big guys right down the road that have to see that data, and B, they open up doors to, let's say, start working with infra, start working with NCG, right? Like have a meaningful independent business because you've unlocked all these warehouses. So that would be my goal. I, you know, if I had a product that was, super unique and retailers were just constantly saying yes, I would try to be as focused as I can and say no to retailers that I think are more of a year two, year three retail rollout, right? Yeah.
Totally agree with you. Those are just incredible opportunities. Those are high velocity accounts that anchor you into DCs. Just, some of the best buyers
Hmm.
out there. Like so many people love Laura from Central Market, who, still for me is one of the only buyers I know who
Yep.
will run up to you at a show like, I would love to carry your product. How can we make that happen? Which is just such a refreshing thing. So definitely a good shout out for her. But I think, someone like her, I think she and Central Market like to go really early with brands and try to, be the first to present them to their shoppers. But, it's not always going to be true. Like, maybe, Fresh Time, Thrive, like you're going to have to show them something, right? So what is Aaron's Cookies or Aaron's Sweet Beverage Company going to do to convince those really awesome anchors to, in fact, anchor you? Like, are you going to try to show them some momentum or some online data or, with this new company that we're pretending that you're starting here? What do you feel like you're going to have to do to have a good shot?
I mean, we say this all the time, but we don't sell on data. You have to sell on your story. And why are you different? Right? Like if I'm Aaron's Sweet Beverage Company and I'm the ninth guy that month to roll out let's say a functional bev, there isn't going to be a whole lot of differentiation unless you put it into the can, you put it into the branding, you put it into the mission, right? So your product and as you as a founder, right, and who you work with have to be different, right? Because we're not going to convince Thrive or let's say Fresh Time to take the product if they don't see any qualities that are different than what they already have on the shelf or the other five guys that are hounding them via email. So you just have to be sure.
Really interesting to hear from you. I think I'm learning from something from you here from a sales standpoint because I think with Central Market and maybe Erewhon, my experience was okay. They will take a look at brand new brands and they like that. But the other ones, I always felt like you need some momentum to show them. Like you need some kind of data slides, even if you're just cobbling together a couple individual wins that you got or just some kind of data. But it sounds like what you're saying is actually you can sell to those buyers based on story and product differentiation alone. So it sounds like you've seen some good success there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's yes, indeed. You're selling the story. Because even if you do get a Central Market and an Erewhon, your data story is still like when you look at the macro picture, there's no data story still, right? I mean, there's ways to prop it up and make it look great, right? You can say, hey, I'm the number two pasta sauce in the section at this store, and someone like a Sprouts might say, great, that's awesome. But they also might say, well, that's 9 stores in Los Angeles. That's not 406 stores across the, whole bottom of the country. So your data, I mean, you really need the bigger retailers to start building data that shows up in Spins or Nielsen. So it's chicken and the egg. But yeah, taking the snapshots from key retailers that you are in on the earliest days is important. but also selling on your story and getting those huge wins is important, right? Like you need the breaks from the key retailers, and you need to capture as much as you possibly can at those early stage retailers.
Great, fantastic. Okay. So, when I was starting out my brand, I did not know anything about the broker landscape. I had worked at brands that had used brokers before, but I didn't necessarily even understand what they did exactly. I certainly didn't know the names of a lot of them and didn't know the differences and who was good at what. So, can you tell me a little bit about if you're an early brand and discovering the landscape, like how should you be thinking about it? How should you be trying to find the right broker? And of course, I'd be really interested to know how do you differentiate Cultivate CPG versus let's say legacy brokers that are out there?
Sure. Yeah. I think there's two different early stage routes. It's one, you've built the company to a place where you're bursting at the seams, right? And you need help desperately. Um, I think so. So that's one way. The other is you're completely clueless, or you're completely clueless as far as how to sell into a retailer. Most founders are very smart. They just haven't figured out the retail game whatsoever, so they need some guides to bring them to market, so to speak, right? So it's either, yeah, you're not going to learn it, or you don't have it under your belt yet, or it's I'm bursting at the seams and I can't keep up with growing my business, right? Most founders are going to be the ops managers, right? So you're doing ops, and then you're also raising capital, right? And then you're trying to be kind of the directional face of the brand, so to speak. So to be also doing all of the sales across the country is it's insane at some point. So you have to go out and find something. So I'll say Cultivate does is maybe dissimilar from most brokers out there. We love the early stage. We want to work with brands who have a clean, empty canvas. I don't want to go work with a brand that's already been out there and shot their shot 5 times with the Wegmans buyer before they come and hire us, right? Like I want to work with them in the beginning, and I want to help them build their strategy, right? And what's also different to an extent is like me and Tom's background is, he's a founder of multiple brands, and I am obviously a KeHE guy, but I also have been on the startup side, right, as the VP of sales for a young brand and scaled nationally. So we have dealt with everything from selling on a story to building your data to, selling innovation that you haven't even made yet, right? Like that's a no brainer. And, managing, trade and spend and forecasting and all that stuff. So we try to provide value outside of just helping you, get a meeting with a retailer or, build a new item in the KeHE portal. We try to bring all of what we've gathered to the table, and I think that's what makes us different.
Let's say a brand wanted to work with you. What's the ideal stage then that they're at when they work to you? Like, if they launch from scratch, as soon as they have sales samples, or you think it's good for them to try to do a little bit of stuff on their own and test and learn a little bit, or what do you think is ideal?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not free. Our team isn't, we don't work for free, and retail is definitely not free, right? I'm going to be the cheapest thing they encounter, but got to have capital. Sending samples is definitely part of the game. So yeah, I mean, I would say like some runway on your brand, and some fuel in the tank there. Really, do you have sales assets? Are you ready to go? Have you thought about this? And that's part of what we do with young brands when we first start kind of courting is we talk through all of that, right? Are you ready for X, Y, and Z? Because this is what it's going to take, right? So that is definitely part of the chat. Yeah.
And what are those rates like? Are you guys flat fee? Do you do commission? Is it both? How does that work? I'm sure everybody listening would like to know.
Yeah, totally. So it's 7,500 a month, 5%, right? So that's sounds maybe expensive, but it's also not expensive compared to some of the options out there, right? You can really blow your brains out. There's a lot of good options out there, though, no doubt. I think the way to think about it as a young brand is you can go hire a director of sales or a VP of sales. They're going to be in that price range or more, and then they're going to go hire a broker, right? And I'm all half of the brands we work with have a director of sales, right? So I'm all for having a dedicated salesperson at your brand. But you think of us as, we're sort of your national sales team in the early days, right? And we also do all the boring, broker administrative stuff.
So you said 7,500 or 5% of sales, whichever is greater. So early days, 7,500. And then once you get to the volume where that's less, then you'll be paying the 5%. And then, so it sounds like you're okay then working with brands at the early stage when even if they don't have a sales lead, and you'll
Mhm.
just basically be that sales lead for them, helping them on strategy and obviously going out and pitching to retailers.
We love that. That's where we thrive.
So that can be a cost saving for brands to maybe delay that sales hire as well, just to lean on you guys a lot. What are the ones who do it best with you? The brands who work best with you, contributing, I would say, to overall sales. Me as a brand, when I worked with a broker, I was able to help a lot on the sales process because I was really active on LinkedIn and I was reaching out to brokers there, or to buyers there, and I was meeting buyers at trade shows and doing a lot of direct follow up. I think sometimes it is pretty special for them to hear directly from you at the brand, and then you can use that to include the broker into the conversation. So what the brands that you work with, who does it best? What do they do to just help the overall process and contribute to I would say a really effective sales cycle?
Yeah. I would say folks who trust us to work hard for them, but then come into the meeting ready to give the brand pitch, right? That's going to be super important that they're ready for those pitches. I think brands who get the opportunity to pitch a lot are going to be the best at pitching. They're going to be the best at closing. Folks that want to get in the weeds and really are engaged, ultimately, they find the most success, right? Because I want to sell all of my brands to every retailer that's incredible, but having that true brand champion founder pushing, right alongside of us, that moves the needle. That goes a long way for sure. So an engaged founder definitely moves the needle.
All right. So I'm sure a lot of people would love some specific account tips if there are a couple that we could jump into. So, if we talk
Yep,
like, Wegmans, a couple others, what would you say to somebody applying to Wegmans for the first time? Like, for example, let's say they're doing it without the help of a broker, they're reaching out to the
sure.
buyer, like any specific tips for them in their proposal or how they approach them?
Yeah, absolutely. Wegmans is a fun one. It's a tough nut to crack. I think you're not going to get anywhere without working with UNFI or any of the smaller distributors that are there. There are a couple other options, local DSD folks that will get your products there, but get in touch with the UNFI folks. Set up meetings directly with them. Get them excited about your brand because they can walk down the hallway to the CM's desk and drop samples and drop your pitch deck and say, hey, if you want to meet with, Daniel at, Daniel's Sweet Bev, like they're the ones that are going to get you in that door. I think, yeah. So that's that. I think you're definitely doing an EDLP at Wegmans, right? They just want an everyday low price. That's kind of the name of their game. And then, what are you doing outside of the doors of Wegmans to drive traffic and brand awareness? That's another, hot button, I guess I would call out. Like, yeah, do you have a big D2C business? What does the footprint look like in upstate New York, right? How many folks know your brand?
Hmm.
So, yeah,
For sure. That makes sense. That definitely jives with my experience that I had with them. I think when I reached out to the buyer, they sent me to the UNFI rep. So I think that's a really good example of
yeah,
when just going right to the account manager can give you a big boost. Cool. And then
yeah.
how about Sprouts, for example? Like, how do you typically approach that with a brand, or how should brands think
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah. Sprouts is an incredible retailer, right? Like everyone wants to be in there. You're constantly warring for time with those category managers. I think what they've done with the innovation table there, the innovation program that they're putting innovation, new brands, products onto, I think is cool. Um, Not all brands would say that, right? That have been on there. It's kind of been mixed feedback, but always items in the portal, reach out out to the category manager responsible for your product, start a dialogue, ask for a meeting, do the whole thing, right? Keep them in the loop, but also make sure you're submitting in the portal to the innovation category, right? They have a dedicated team at Sprouts that is focused on items that are going in there, and reach out to them, give them the pitch, try to get FaceTime, send tons of samples. Like I was in the Sprouts office last week, and I will tell you, all of the people that work at Sprouts are trying your samples. And when I worked at Albertsons, it was the same deal. Folks would send samples, and guess what? In the break room, they're picking up a bag of your popcorn, or they're grabbing your drink, or they're eating your bar, right? Like the people in the Sprouts office are trying your product and ultimately forming a decision, right? As a group, like, hey, is this something we like, need, etc. But yeah, I mean, you got to hit it from all angles, right? Hit the innovation, hit the CM, and continue to keep them posted, right? And push.
Yeah, I mean, obviously seeing tons of brands get their chance on that innovation set, which is a huge purchase order, which,
Yeah,
can be, that's, I mean, terrifying, but, also a really big
yeah,
opportunity. I know they're testing a lot of brands out there before
uh-huh.
thinking about them for the shelf. And is that, so their portal, is that something anybody can log on to for the submissions?
Yep, yep. It's public. You can jump in there and just upload your products, images, kind of your price list, so to speak, and tell your story briefly. And it goes in, and the Sprouts team looks at it, and they'll give you feedback. They'll give you acceptance or denial. If they give you a denial, they'll kind of give you a why. So yeah, and they always encourage you, hey, for the next go around. If they give you a no, it's come back the next time.
So another retailer, Whole Foods, who relies a lot on their portal, right? Like if you reach out to a category manager there, a lot of the time they're just going to say, "Great, here's the link to the portal, and you can see all the reset timing there and submit your product for consideration." What do you tell brands about Whole Foods? Like how can you get beyond that kind of a response and try to build a relationship? When I running a brand, I always felt like if I don't know the buyer and I've never talked to them, there's no way we're getting a yes from them. So I would kind of go crazy trying to find some way to build a little bit of a relationship. What do you tell brands specific to Whole Foods?
I think Whole Foods is a retailer that does care, right? They care about product quality. They care about innovation. They care about people, right? They care about founders. They do want to see innovation. They want to see new products that don't just kind of eat away at what they already have on the shelf. So if you're willing to, obviously, assuming we're talking about young brands, like if you're willing to offer an exclusive or create some exclusive flavors or products to show to Whole Foods, that sometimes will spark up some interest. If you're willing to go the extra, mile, so to speak, on maybe getting the regenerative, cert on your package, or anything of that nature, right? That really moves the needle from a, certificate quality standards bar, like that is something that gets them out of bed, right?
This is fun, man.
Yeah,
Let's keep running down
yeah,
the list. This
yeah.
is good info. All right, so I'll pick the next one, and then you pick the
Cool.
one after that. So I'm going to
Okay.
go Harmons. What are your tips for Harmons, which is an incredible account?
Harmon's, yeah, no, it's absolutely incredible, and they follow the script, right? They have a category review. They look at most categories twice a year. They look at samples, they taste product, cut product. I would say I don't have much to add on the relationship side within those walls, just because that's someone on my team who's really good there. But it's an interesting retailer because, in a sense, they compete with Costco, right? So they're looking for unique product that can stand up against everyone in their market, right? And so they move a lot of volume. But yeah, I would say just playing the game there and following up with those buyers and trying to get meetings, and sending down folks to reset when you actually get in there. That's a thing, right? Like they expect the broker and the vendor community to come and help reset the stores during, let's say a beverage reset. So yeah, stick to the script and follow the category review schedule, submit your paperwork on time, and keep showing up, right?
All right, perfect. Any other Any other retailers you think would be fun to give some tips on?
Good question. I mean, we could talk about Thrive. Yeah,
Let's
Thrive
do it.
is awesome, right? When I was at Yai's Thai, right, as the VP of sales, that was one of our earlier accounts that we got on, and we hit it perfectly at when Whole30 was peaking, right? On Thrive's website, on Melissa's, social, and our brand as well. We were in the spotlight a ton. So we sold, I mean, it was a massive, massive account and probably still is today for the brand. I don't want to talk numbers or anything, but they're great. James and Caleb and Kelly, and I'm definitely forgetting some folks over there, but they have an incredible library of products. They do a great job on private label. They do a great job on marketing, and they know who their shopper is, right? So I would say they've switched to Range Me. So you need to make sure your submission gets in through Range Me, and then you need to get with the CM who manages the products, and you need to convince them to meet with you, look at the product. I think one thing they do is, they say, hey, send a set of samples to the whole squad, right? Like they're truly like a family, it feels like. So when they give you that thumbs up, don't send it unsolicited. When they give you that thumbs up, the whole team that runs the show as far as category assortment is tasting your product, right? So put some TLC into those samples. Also know that they're very data driven now, right? Like they're not brand new anymore. They're making great decisions for their shop, and they're maximizing the space they have in their warehouses. So they will look at your data for sure. So knowing what you're going into in that combo, just being prepared to speak to, where we're at in the natural channel, where we're at in conventional, what's Whole Foods doing, right? Like I might get in trouble for this, but Whole Foods doesn't roll into spins, right? It's a Nielsen account, right? So they can't see what's going on in Whole Foods. So having that in your back pocket of, hey, here's the data story at Whole Foods is important.
Yeah, definitely was my experience with Thrive also, and I think they were always really responsive to me. I love the team over there, Kelly, Christine, James also.
Christine, yeah, I forgot.
Yeah,
Sorry, Christine. I was going
Chris,
to give her a shout out. She's
Christine's the
awesome.
best.
Yeah,
Yeah, we had the
Christine's
whole
the best.
crew at our karaoke party also at Expo East last year. They're a lot of fun. Also, I definitely see them traveling as a fun team. But they gave me really specific feedback when it was too early and said, here's what we are looking for. You guys don't necessarily have that yet. And then later we did, and I went back and it was a really great discussion. And they're super engaged with our community, so I really appreciate that about them. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I guess, on the opposite side of getting into a retailer, I'm just curious, have you been in situations where the brands unfortunately are on the cusp of getting discontinued? Have you seen any brands do something to try to avoid that and kind of keep the relationship going, or have you seen brands at least manage it well when they are getting discontinued and make the most of it?
There's nothing good about getting discoed. There's never anything good that comes, unless it's just a lose-lose account that you're never gonna, reach where you want to be with them anyway. But there's really no secrets, right? It's do more promos, see if you can get some off-shelf placement. You're not going to get it though if you're not doing well. So having maybe boots in the field a little bit, right? If it's in your backyard, might be a good opportunity. I guess I'll say to back up though. I think there was another question you had that was interesting. So, like, how do you evolve your brand to win, right? And a lot of that is from when you have discos or when you have launches that don't go as planned. I'll give you a couple stories. One is a product that we started working with at the very beginning, right? Like a long time ago, or well, a few years ago, and we were on board. We were selling their products. We were getting yeses from large natural key players, right? Sprouts, Fresh Town, all the players. But we told them from day one, hey, your product is priced way too high. And this sounds very basic, I understand, but the rest of the market is at $29.99. You're at, $50 to $55. You need to change it. And they said, you know, yeah, we'll see. We have it all figured out. We go into a Whole Foods Market meeting. Food says, this is awesome. Your product is killer. Your mission is great. Put this in a $29.99 tub and I will buy it. Right. And they were like, yeah, of course we want to do that. So anyway, long story short, we gave that advice. Hey, this is like what these retailers are really going to be looking for. And it's also going to ensure not only can we get the product in, but can it get off the shelf? Right. So like thinking two steps ahead of, I can get it in, I can sell the story, I have a cool mission, I have a great product. How are you going to get it off the shelf, right? And that comes down to all the, I'm not a marketing guy, but the 5 Ps or whatever, right? It's pricing, it's so on and so forth. But yeah, that's one instance where we, said, hey, make a small tweak. Let's make a few different SKUs that are a different size to hit a specific price point, and it ended up being very successful.
Right. Got it. Yeah. So pricing, promotions, placement, packaging. Hopefully the placement often is up to the buyer. So that probably would be my go-to if we're going to get kicked off, is to complain about the placement,
Yeah,
the position,
right.
and how many facings we got to try to save that one. But who knows if how often that's successful. So, well, Aaron, this has been super, super interesting. I'm wondering if you want to shout out maybe any of the brands that you work with as like, hey, here's a perfect example of a brand we can just absolutely crush. They're set up the right way for us and we can come in and just absolutely accelerate their growth.
No doubt. So you're saying like a couple of successes we've had, or are you saying just in general? Okay, yeah. I mean, for starters, shout out Paul at Orabora. I mean, that one was great timing, obviously for him. We helped him, but really it was for us, right? Like it was perfect timing. So that's an awesome brand that's in a, rocket ship going to the outer sphere, right? And then Dr. Kellyanne is a big brand that we have in our portfolio today. So it's a bone broth brand that we launched into retail really February 2021. And they have been on a rocket ship. They're, getting into every door and they're selling off the shelf. So that has been incredible fun. Shout out to Emily at Little Bucks. We've been working with her for a while now, and she can tell you her founder story if she hasn't already. She's had a crazy roller coaster ride, but we're launching in Whole Foods in a month or two nationally, and we're super excited about that. I mean, that's obviously that sort of the holy grail that most of these founders are looking for, but we've picked up a lot of major key retailers, a lot of conventional retailers along the way that are a little more premium. So yeah, so those are just a couple to name a few.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those are great. I mean, and Paul especially has been so helpful to our community, just sharing a lot of his lessons along the way about fundraising, and man, he knows a lot about sales. I did a webinar with him recently and was just really blown away by, I think, not just his ability to do it and working with you guys, and just obviously getting tons of
Yep.
distribution, but I think also just how thoughtfully he thinks about sales in general and like the early and later stages of a
Uh-huh.
brand. I learned a lot from him. And yes, we did actually just manage to get Emily on the podcast as well. So
Cool.
we'll have an episode dropping talking all about Little Bucks and her story, and even revealing the new flavor that they're launching in January. So really
That's
excited
awesome.
about that. Just it's a great product with a really cool story and mission to just get buckwheat out there in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Um, well, Aaron, I just want to thank you again. I think this has been a super interesting episode. I definitely learned a lot from you. So thank you for sharing your incredible journey and shedding light on the strategies that help brands drive success, and the ones working with you as well. So just before we go, anything else that you want to mention? Any calls to action or any ways for brands to connect with you?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll start with connect with me. You can hit me up, LinkedIn, or you can send me an email, Aaron at cultivatecpg.com, or shoot me a text, 847-722-8215. I'm here to chat. So is Tommy and our whole gang. I would say call to action is focus on key anchor accounts. That's what Cultivate does. We are, I would say, hyper focused on opening, key retailers with key warehouses. So that's what I would do. That's going to move the needle and bring in real money for you, and set yourself self up to, really succeed long term. Build the foundation.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this knowledge with the community, and really excited to see you at some of our future events. Hopefully, our Expo West Alley Rally. For anybody out there who doesn't know about it, it is a 1,000 person bowling party that we throw at Expo West at Bolero nearby. And there are lots of cool backpack brands who are demoing there often for the first time, competing to win a booth at next year's expo. So hopefully we will see you there, Aaron, and just
Yes.
and
We'll,
lots of the brands
we'll
from the community.
looking forward to it, Daniel. Really appreciate you having me on. And yeah, we'll see you. We'll see you in Anaheim in a couple months.
All right, and props to you for dropping your phone number directly on the podcast. I think that's the first time somebody's done it, but it's very helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, man. We'll talk soon. I really appreciate it, Daniel.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Have a good one.